The hatchling had no name. Names were given by clutchmates, by elders, by the warm press of a mother's snout against the top of a young dragon's head. He had none of those things. What he had was rain, a broken wing that healed crooked, and a hollow beneath a rotting oak where the wind was slightly less cruel than everywhere else. He was barely 3 seasons old, small for his kind, silver-scaled where most dragons his age burned with copper or gold. The other hatchlings had called him dull shine. The elders had looked through him as though he were smoke. And when the Great Migration came, when the dragon clans rose on thundering wings and moved south toward warmer peaks, no one had noticed the small silver shape left behind in the mud. No one dragon, anyway. Jack heard the sound first, something between a wheeze and a growl, muffled by the tree lean behind his lumber cabin. He set down his axe and tilted his head. 17 years in the ashwood had taught him to read the forest's moods. This wasn't a wolf. Too irregular. Too defeated sounding. He found the hatchling wedged under the roots of a fallen oak, shivering so hard his scales clicked against each other like rattled coins. One wing folded wrong. The left, heeled over at a broken angle that would never fully straighten. His ribs pressed visible ridges against his skin. His eyes, when they cracked open to look at Jack, were the dim amber of a fire running out of fuel. Jack stood very still. He had met dragons twice in his life. Once from a very great distance, and once from a distance that had permanently scarred his left forearm. He knew, with the reasonable part of his brain, that he should back away slowly, return to his cabin, and let nature do what nature did. He crouched down instead. "Hey," he said quietly. "You look awful." The hatchling bared teeth no larger than Jack's thumbnail. A threat display, technically. Also, clearly, the most effort the creature had made in days. His neck trembled with it. "Yeah," Jack said. "I'd be angry too." He brought broth first, venison, thick with marrow, in his largest pot, dragged on a sled through the mud. The hatchling didn't eat. Jack left it and walked back to his cabin. He returned the next morning. The pot was empty and the hatchling had moved 6 inches closer to the open air. Progress. By the 4th day, the dragon had a name, not given by elders, not granted by tradition, but earned the way Jack figured most good names were earned, by surviving long enough to need one. Jack called him Ash, because of where he'd found him, and because the name felt like something that had come through fire and was still here. Ash did not appreciate this at first. He snapped. He hissed. He knocked over 2 of Jack's best water buckets with his tail on what Jack was increasingly convinced was purpose. When Emma rode up from the valley town on her gray mare, Emma, who was Jack's oldest friend, a healer by training and a skeptic by nature, she pulled up short at the sight of a juvenile dragon sulking on Jack's porch. "Jack!" "Emma, there is a dragon on your porch. His name is Ash." "Jack, there is a dragon on your porch." "You already said that." Emma dismounted very slowly, never taking her eyes off Ash. Ash watched her with the flat, calculating gaze of a creature that had decided to reserve judgment. This, Jack had learned, was actually high praise from him. He was abandoned, Jack said. Whole clan left. Bad wing. Couldn't follow. Emma exhaled through her nose. Then she walked to her saddlebag, pulled out a wrapped bundle of dried herbs and a small tin of salve she used for deep tissue injuries, and walked toward the porch steps. "The wing joint," she said. "It healed wrong. I may be able to improve the range of motion if he'll let me." "He won't." "He will," she said, with the certainty of a woman who had once talked a wounded bear into holding still. "Because he's smart enough to know he needs it." Ash held still. It took 3 months. 3 months of broth and butchered deer and the occasional stolen chicken that Jack paid Farmer Harlan for without mentioning why. 3 months of Emma's visits, her careful hands working the scar tissue of the wing joint while Ash gritted his teeth and endured it with a dignity that Jack found genuinely moving. 3 months of Ash watching Jack work, watching his hands on the axe, watching the way he fixed fences and sharpened tools and sat on the porch at night reading by lantern light, with an expression that slowly, over weeks, shifted from suspicion to something approaching fascination. Humans, Jack gathered, were not what Ash had been told they were. He had been told they were small, short-lived, fragile things that burned easily and screamed a great deal. This was, Jack had to admit, not entirely inaccurate. But Ash had apparently not been told that humans persisted, that they returned every morning regardless of how many buckets had been knocked over, that they learned, that they adapted endlessly, stubbornly, with a cheerful refusal to accept that any given problem was unfixable. The day Ash spread both wings, the good one and the crooked one, and held them open in the cold October air, Jack stopped chopping wood and just watched. The left wing didn't arch perfectly. It never would. But it opened. 40 degrees of new motion that Emma had coaxed back from locked scar tissue, one careful session at a time. Ash looked at it. Then he looked at Jack. Then he made a sound Jack had never heard from him before. Low, resonant, chest deep. And Jack, who had no frame of reference for dragon communication, somehow understood it anyway. You did not give up on me. No, Jack said. I didn't. Word spread, the way word does in small places, because small places have very little else to do. The dragon was living with the woodcutter. The woodcutter had tamed him. The woodcutter was controlling him, some said, with magic or tricks or some secret human manipulation that the dragon clans ought to know about. When 3 elder dragons appeared at the edge of the ashwood the following spring, wings wide, eyes cold, Jack walked out to meet them with his axe over one shoulder and absolutely no plan beyond talking first. Ash walked beside him. The elders looked at the hatchling, the silver-scaled, crooked-winged, named Hatchling, and one of them said, in the low thunder of old Draconic, "You were left behind." Ash raised his head. "Yes." "You survived." "Yes." The elder's gaze moved to Jack. There was a long silence in which Jack became very aware of how easily he could be stepped on. Then the elder said, in accented but clear common tongue, "How?" Jack thought about it. About broth in a pot dragged through mud. About Emma's hands on scar tissue. About sitting on a porch in the dark and reading out loud because a silver hatchling had started inching closer every night, pretending not to listen. "Showed up," Jack said. "Every day? That's all." Another silence. Then the elder said something in Draconic that Jack didn't catch. Ash translated later, when they were back on the porch and the elders had gone. She said, "A human who shows up every day is worth more than a clan that leaves once." Jack turned that over. "High praise," he said. Ash huffed, a sound Jack had learned to recognize as laughter. Smoke curled from his nostrils into the evening air. "Yes," Ash agreed, in common, which he had been learning since February, one word at a time. Highest. They called it a scandal in the dragon clans. A hatchling who chose a human's hearth over a proper clutch. A woodcutter who had no right to the bond he'd stumbled into. Jack didn't lose sleep over it. He had a cabin to maintain, wood to cut, and a dragon who had started, quietly and without announcement, leaving portions of his kills at the edge of the property. For the wolves, Jack realized eventually, who had begun to give the ashwood a wide berth. Protection. Freely given. Emma came every 2 weeks. Ash met her at the tree line now and walked her in, which she bore with the expression of someone trying very hard not to be visibly delighted. The wing never flew perfectly, but it flew. And every morning, Jack walked out to find a large silver shape curled around the base of the porch like a living wall, eyes half open, watching the tree lean. And every morning, something in Jack's chest settled like a stone into still water. Showing up, he thought. That's all it ever took. Sometimes the thing that saves a life isn't power or magic or ancient destiny. Sometimes it's just a human who doesn't know how to leave. And that, in the end, is enough.